Hi, and welcome to the fifth video in the C# for Beginners tutorial series. So in the last few videos, we've gone over variables, how to display to the screen. We've also seen operators, but every time that we've done something, if we wanted to kind of do the same action again, we've had to rewrite those lines of code. So in this video, we're going to be going over some functions, aka methods, so we can actually reuse our code, and this is actually going to be really handy later on. It just avoids you having to rewrite a bunch of code multiple times over again, because you're probably going to be using the same couple lines or same 10-20 lines multiple times, especially if you're making games or different types of applications. So let's actually go ahead and take a look at those now. So we're just going to go and create a new project. We're going to create our console application, and we're going to call this void methods, and we're going to see why in just a moment. So there are actually two types of methods or functions in C#. We have return methods and we have void methods. So in this video, we're going to be covering void methods only. And then in part 2, we're going to be covering the different types of return methods and the differences between the two. So we have our screen here. So what we've been doing in the past, if we've had to write hello world, let's say, we've been doing console dot write line, and then we would go ahead and put our string here, and we would just do hello world, my name is, and then we would put our name here. So let's just create a name variable here. So string name, let's put our name as Steve here. And then we're just going to do a console dot read key. So if we launch this here, we're going to see that we see hello world, my name is Steve. And then if we wanted to kind of show this over and over again, but with different names, we would have to then change the name variable. So if we wanted to change our name, let's say to Richard, and then we would have to rewrite that same hello world, my name is, and then we have our two lines. Methods will actually simplify this to where we only have to write the majority of the code once, and then we could just call that method or function over and over again with different parameters and actually get a different output. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So we're going to get rid of all this code here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to actually go under this read key. You can do this anywhere. It does not matter. So unlike PowerShell, the entire code is compiled. So whether you call your functions before the function's actually written, that is completely okay. In PowerShell, you always had to write your functions at the top because the script was running from line 1 downwards. In C#, that is not the case. The code is actually compiled. So we're going to create our function here, and we're going to put the word void, and then we're going to say, we're going to call our function hello world, and we're just going to do an open and close parentheses, and then an open and close curly bracket. And you actually do not need a semicolon after your method or function, but you can definitely put one, but it is not mandatory. So here we have our hello world, and we are just going to do console dot write line, and we are going to say hello world, and that's all we're going to put for now. And then what we can do here is do hello world open and close parentheses. This is calling our function. So this is the actual function definition. So here we have void for our void method, and void means it does not return anything. So we're not expecting anything back. So this is going to be something that we can just call. We do not have to assign it to a variable. And then this is our function or method name. And then in these parentheses, we can actually put parameters. So as we've seen in Python and in PowerShell, we can always have parameters in our functions. So we're going to see those in just a little bit. So in this case, we are not taking in any parameters. We are just simply writing out hello world. So here I'm calling hello world. I'm going to call it again. And I'm actually going to call it a third time. So instead of having to write the console.writeLine hello world, I'm only writing it once, and then I'm calling that function. And if we see here, we get our hello world 3 times. Now in this case, it might not be super time saving because we only have one line here. But in the case where we had our name, so we can do hello world, and we're just going to say, we're just going to be changing this exact method here. My name is, and then we're just going to put name here. We're just going to have to add our little $sign in front of our string to make it an interpolated string. And then in our parentheses here in our function, we are going to add the words of string name. And then see, as you can see here, our squiggly line disappeared, but now our methods all have squiggly lines. And this is because we are now expecting a parameter. So what we're going to do here, we're going to put our first name as Steve, our second name as Richard, and then our third name we are going to put as Penny. And we are going to go ahead and run this here. So here we have our 3 lines. Hello world, my name is Steve. Hello world, my name is Richard. Hello world, my name is Penny. And this was much easier than having to reassign our name variable throughout our code. So this really kind of shows how usable and how much easier it is to read our code once we start using functions, and it just saves you a bunch of time or a bunch of copy pasting. And also avoids a lot of errors because you're not rewriting that same line over and over again. If you have the output that you want the first time, you're always going to get that same result. And then we can also do other things. So if we have a void, we're going to do an add, and we're going to put, go ahead and put int num1, int num2. So here we have 2 parameters. And then we're just going to go ahead and just do a console.writeLine. And we're going to go ahead and just put an interpolated string here and put our curly brackets. And all I'm going to do is actually just simply do num1 plus num2. We're going to put it directly in our string. We're not going to put it in a variable, although we could do that. So we're just going to go ahead and just do add. We're going to add 2 and 2 here. If we actually go ahead and we get our answer is 4. Now, something that you have to watch out for with C# and really pretty much any programming languages is the scope of our methods. Now, this might be a little bit of an advanced topic right off the bat, but I do want to cover it now before we go too far because it has a lot to do with methods. So here we have int num1, int num2, and it works great. Now, in the case where I would have int num1 here, and we're going to make this equal to 1,000, and then we're going to have int num2, and we're going to make this equal 50. Oops, 50. All right, and then if I removed these parameters, and we just remove these parameters here, we are going to get 1,050, which that's probably as you would have expected. Now, in my function here, if I go num1 equals, let's say I want to do 2, and then num2 equals 2, and let's go ahead and let's do our result here. So we get 4, which is as we would probably expect because we're saying num1 equals 2, num2 equals 2, and we're adding them up together. That's fine. But after our add now, if I go ahead and just do a console.writeLine, and we do our interpolated string, and we go num1 is now num1, and then our \n for our new line. Num2 is now num2. Now, what do we think that num1 and num2 is going to be? Is it still going to be that 1,050, or is it going to be 2 and 2? Now, remember that we are calling this console write line after our add function. So if we run this, we see that num1 is now 2 and num2 is now 2. So we've actually overwritten our variables that we've declared at the top here. And this is really a very dangerous function because we are changing our variables that we've defined at the top that we might not necessarily be aware of. Whereas if I did num1 and then int num2 here, and then we just did, we passed in num1 and num2, although this would be very, very confusing for the user because we're passing in 1050 and we're still getting the result of 4, our variables were safe because we've redeclared num1 and num2 as local variables inside of the function. So if you declare a variable outside of a function in your main application, it is going to be a global variable. It's going to be accessible by any function, but also modifiable by any function. And by default, like this is going to be the standard unless you actually declare a variable inside of a function or a parameter of a function. In that case, it then creates a local type of that variable, and that variable is only accessible within the function or method. So in here, the string name is only accessible in this function. If I go ahead and try to do console.writeLine, and we do interpolated string here, and we do name, even though it's after I've called the hello world, we get squigglies because the name does not exist in the current context. And the same thing would be if I go ahead into our add function and I do int result equals num1 plus num2, and we do result here instead. So if we run this now in our add, we should see the proper 1050, which is perfect. And then if we, after our add, if we try to do a console.writeLine of the interpolated string, and then we do our result here, which in theory, we have declared in our add, so we're calling it after our add, but the result variable does not exist because it is only created and only pertinent within our add function. So that is something that you're going to want to be careful of while programming in C# and really almost any programming languages, is definitely be aware of the scope of your variables. If you're within a function or method and you declare a variable in there, it will not be accessible outside of it. But also if you have global variables in your script and you forget to maybe declare a variable in your function and you're just going ahead and modifying that global variable, it will definitely not like it too well. And that's kind of where the constants might be a little handy, because in reality, your global variables should be things that probably don't necessarily change, or that are protected against change by all means. So some of these things that I would say would be very safe would be something like a gravity variable as a global variable would make sense because it's never going to change through function to function unless you're modifying your gravity for a space type game or something like that. So that is really the basics with void functions. We don't get anything back from them. They're only used to perform some sort of action and then give an output to the screen usually. And we've seen parameters that we can take in as well. And we've also seen the scopes of our variables within our function and within the whole application as well. So in the next video, we're going to go over the return methods or return functions, where we can actually get back something and assign them to variables to use later on in our application. So make sure you stay tuned in for that. If you guys have any comments or questions, please leave them down below in the comment section. If you guys have a topic that you guys would like me to cover more, or a topic that I haven't covered yet, please let me know down in the comments below, and I will do my best to do those for you guys. And be sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and also make sure to hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you guys on the next video.